Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. We are live on Zoom, soon to be live on LinkedIn, I am sure, um, joined by a great panel, and we're here to talk about thriving in hospitality in 2026. So a little bit of context about the why on that. We've just released our hospitality culture report, and some of what we have seen in that report has shown us that there is a gap in hospitality in terms of the experience, in terms of the environment, the felt experience, and what people are telling us is important versus what maybe the data is saying is important as well. So we're going to try and unknit all of that in this webinar. We've got some great people joining us. So we've got Nick from a people-centric position, a Chief People Officer. We've got Craig, who's got an operational background and currently works with operators. We've got Jordan, who is going to be talking about how we listen. So you'll see a poll on your screen, which is a bit about you. So we'd love to find out a bit more about what you're doing, where you work, so that we can make sure we're tailoring this. But I'm going to hand this over to introductions quickly. So I'm Nick, I'm the CEO of the People Experience Hub. I'm the host. I'm going to try and not talk so much. Nick, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Nick Marshall. I'm the People Director at Welcome Break, one of the largest motorway service operators in the UK. Nice to be here. Thank you, Nick.
Craig.
Hi everyone, I'm Craig. I'm the Ops Director for Purple Story. We deliver operational excellence training to operators and spent the previous 24 years in hospitality as an operator.
Amazing. And Jordan.
I'm head of client delivery here at the People Experience Hub. Also one of our principal consultants. And prior to this, I actually ran quite a deep and complex employee listening strategy for Greene King, one of the UK's biggest pub chains.
Amazing. So why are we here, and what's this all about? So one thing that came in our report was that engagement is a board level issue. And there's a general concern about whether engagement is a HR thing, whether it's a people thing. And what we're very clear about is that it's a board level issue. And why is that? Well, in hospitality, engagement is scoring 4.9 percentage points lower than our overall industry standard. So it's scoring lower than all other industry data sets that we have. We are seeing that that's driven by a lower intention to stay, which is 6.4 percentage points lower than our industry standard, and lower motivation, 4.3. There's some great stuff that's coming. So I'm going to lead with that negative clickbait about why this is an issue. And I'm just going to pop up a slide here that I hope everyone can see. So pulling out some of that data that we can see there. And I've included all of our engagement stats on the side and called out two of the biggest ones that are there. So I'm going to jump into this because what we are seeing is at the People Experience Hub, we measure environment, we measure the feelings at work, and we measure the outcomes like engagement. And I'm going to go back to the felt experience. So for us, the felt experience of feelings of autonomy, belonging, connection, we see that throughout all of our information, that is the powerhouse of hospitality. That is what is getting stuff through. So Nicola, I want to focus on belonging. I mean, you have a huge multi-site operation, and within each site, multiple sites within a site. So where have you seen belonging have them move the most in a multi-site operation, and what do you stop doing to make space for it?
So, great question. We are ultimately a massive franchise organisation. So it's very difficult for us to deliver brand welcome break, both to our customer and to our employee. And people, regardless of whether or not they're your customer or your employee, whether or not they're your team member. So we want to make people feel welcome, whether or not they are a customer coming through our doors, being delivered an amazing flat white in Starbucks, or whether or not they're having the best fried chicken that they can have in KFC, that they are delivered by people care, or people who care for people who are traveling. So our business is really transient. So we don't really have regular customers as such, but we all have our favorite motorway services. We've all got one that we like to stop at, and probably a particular seat where you like to kind of watch the traffic go by or something. But we have 90 million customers a year through our doors, and so trying to build that connection with our customers can sometimes be quite tough. But the team do a fantastic job. But that sense of belonging is about, how do we create somewhere where you don't get the Sunday scaries, or where you want to come to work, where you feel like you can come to work and be yourself and bring your whole self to work, whether or not you are part-time with caring responsibilities, whether or not you've got tattoos, whether or not you've got a neurodiverse tendency, or whatever that may be. I think there is no better place to come to work and be yourself than hospitality. Because if you can't come to work in hospitality and be yourself, then I don't know where you're gonna fit. Because we have people from all walks of life, all different ages. Our team range from 16 to 87. We have 25 different ethnic backgrounds from 75 different nationalities that work in this business. And so I need all of those individuals, all 6,500 people that work here, to come to work and go, I found somewhere where I feel like I belong. I've made friends here. My manager looks after me. People know my name. And I think we've really started to see some of that come out post-pandemic, particularly where we've focused on making sure people can come to work feeling like they bring all of themselves to work.
I love that. Thank you. And Jordan, I'm interested. How do you measure belonging?
So it's an interesting one. I think you've got two related concepts that we've already talked about. You've got belonging and this sense of, do I feel part of a team? Do I feel I can show up as myself? Interesting, showing up as yourself is like, those belonging stats are always quite valuable when we're analyzing data, because you can get really high belonging companies where, like sort of Welcome Break, where everyone is accepted and can come to work as themselves because it's accepting of such diversity. And you can also get really high belonging companies who are monocultures. Not to throw too much shade on recruitment consultancies, but you can see recruitment consultancies results often skew that way, of everyone's kind of a bit the same and like are motivated by the same things, and therefore feel a strong sense of belonging because they're with their kind of tribe. And so there's an interesting, when you're measuring belonging, it's worth taking into account both personal belonging and belonging in your team and your department. And then you've also got this broader feeling of connectedness. Like, how do you feel connected to the brand that you work for? And Nicola, I think it's really interesting you're talking about having this franchise business and how do you connect people to brand Welcome Break as well as the brands that they work for individually. And one thing we've actually found when measuring organizations like that is you can actually ask people, where do they feel the most connection? Do you feel it with your team, but not like with your team, but not with the brand, with your brand, but not the Welcome Break, or with Welcome Break above all else? And it's that kind of thing where you can start to tease apart, where is that relationship? So you know what to go big on in the comms versus what you might want to take a back seat and focus on the other elements.
And that's really interesting. I think that when we talk about belonging, you've talked about connection there. So I've just brought up on the screen some of the results from the report that show in the felt experience, and we can see autonomy, belonging, connection, enjoyment, growth, purpose, which are the typical areas of the felt experience that we measure. In hospitality, connection, belonging, purpose, and enjoyment are the powerhouse. And it's unsurprising when you think about hospitality as an industry itself. But obviously within that busy service, Craig, I guess a question for you is, if you're a general manager, you're a head of department, you're running a shift, how do you lift enjoyment without spending loads of cash? You haven't suddenly got a big budget to go and turn around it. How does a great general manager or head of lift enjoyment in a busy shift?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think the theme of probably a lot of what I'm going to say today is around just keeping things simple. I think a GM or an HOD or somebody that's responsible for managing a team of people that is active in service, you've absolutely got to be present. And And I think that feeds into what Nick was saying around, seeing people, seeing individuals, etc. And you've got to kind of just cut through the weeds for people as they're getting on. I think the value of taking somebody, stopping somebody in their tracks and just saying, you're doing an awesome job, well done, thank you, is a completely free way of just driving engagement, driving connection, and making people feel valued in what they're doing. The art of hospitality is in kind of delivering that experience, right? And in order for, as you've already said, in order for the team to be delivering on that shift, you've got to be delivering for the team. So you see somebody in the weeds, pull them out of it. See someone do something great, catch someone doing something right, make a big show of them.
I love that. I'm going to, I know I said I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to tell a story now. I did some work for Fuller's and their pub chain across London, and lots and lots of pubs. And I always remember going in with the operations director into the counting house by Bank, and a guy called Jonathan Swain, and it was rammed. We were there to interview the general manager there and to talk to him about culture and what was going on. It was rammed. The first thing this main board ops director did was took off their jacket, rolled their sleeves up, jumped behind and started pulling pints, and threw a wet rag at me and said, "You can't pull pints, Nick, but you can go and clear pint pots off the table and wipe the tables down, bring the pint pots over, and let's clear this service, because that's more important than what we came to do. We'll find space for that later." And I think that's exactly what you're talking about there, isn't it? Which is just, you've just got to get in there and make it happen. And I felt connected. So I'm going to ask probably all three now around rituals that build connection, and how do you spot low energy when you're on the floor? Two questions. I'd love to hear from everybody on that. If somebody's on their floor, they're in a pub, they are at a services, they're in a restaurant, how do you spot low energy in a busy service? What's the ritual that builds connection? Nick?
I think quiet times are the worst. Like, we all moan about, oh my God, it's so busy. But the quiet time's the worst. The key one for me is we will typically say we don't want phones on the shop floor. Like, we don't want, but we live on a device now, right? So they're in pockets, they're in aprons, and it's, how do you know when someone's a little bit kind of not feeling it for the day? They've got their phone in their hand. They're like around the back of the counter having a look at something. Now, part of that is driven by us as a business, in terms of just how much we do digitally. But I think, when you walk in somewhere, you feel it. Like, it is to the felt experience. There is that feeling of, how do you feel when you come to work, the overall piece, but actually when you walk in somewhere, has it got a warm feeling about it? Does it feel as though the team are engaged in what they're doing, what they're expected to deliver? Do you get a good morning, how can I help you, like, when they come in, or do you get a grunt of like at the till, where they're expected, where they're just waiting for you to like give them an order? So it's kind of, I think for me, you can feel it when you walk in somewhere, particularly in a hospitality business. We've probably all walked into a pub or a restaurant and gone, no, not today, and walked back out and gone to the pub down the road instead. And then I think, how do you build that on a day-to-day basis? I think comes down to Craig's point about keep things simple. How well do you know your team? Like, and it's managers have such an impact and such an influence on how people feel when they come to work. And it's as easy as not ignoring somebody when they walk through the door because you're focused on something else. It's making sure that you lift your head and say good morning, hello, good afternoon, how are you doing? Did you have a nice evening? Like, my team know Monday morning, don't necessarily go, hi Nick, how are you? How was your weekend? But they'll do it anyway, because that builds the Monday connection. Like, it starts the week off. If we all start with going, right, need to get into this. And it's the same when you're in, in that operational business, just lifting your head to be able to build that piece of connection. And it's the simple things of, how much do I know about you? And it can be fairly surface level. Of, do I know your favorite chocolate bar to go and buy you when you're feeling a little bit 3 o'clock slump in the afternoon? Do I know your favorite coffee and what I can, get ready for you when you come in? Or do I just know your kids' names? Like, they're really simple things just to say, how are you doing? And those pieces of immediate connection between manager and team to team, or even employee to customer, make a big difference for how I feel about coming to work.
I kind of build on what you're saying there, Nick, as well. Like, I think one extra layer to consider is around enjoyment and energy. Like, it's energy and enjoyment kind of go hand in hand. And there is also a piece here where an organization can do a lot, a manager can do a lot, but there's also an element of helping people to understand their own energy and like helping them to build energy in themselves to enable that consistent delivery. Like, hospitality is hard. Like, it's hard work. I once had someone describe to me, like, one of the best things you can do if you're working behind a bar is do Pilates. Like, it's that kind of thing of, it's about physicality. You're doing a lot of movement. And there are these, and helping your teams to understand where their lower energy might also be coming from in a coaching conversation or in a general thing can also help when they're low energy if things are busy. Also find that, and it's a hard conversation to broach, but I've come from pubs, is if you've seen someone in the pub until 11, 12 the night before, and then they've come to work behind the bar the day after at 9 a.m. and they're low energy, it's opening the conversation of, was that potentially the best course of action you could have taken before a shift? And it's the difficult conversations, but over time they can yield much bigger results as people learn to manage their own energy levels as well.
Right, thanks, Craig.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think we've all had those nights, Jordan, where we should probably stay behind the bar a little bit too long. Yeah, I think just picking up on Nick's point there, one of the fundamental things that will kick off any session with in Purple Stories around the iceberg model, and just that bit about kind of lowering the water level, just getting to know somebody to build that relationship. I think it's super important for managers. And for team generally, so just getting to know each other as a team, that building that relationship across the team. And I think it's also a dead interesting point around we do moan when it's busy, but we kind of take our foot off the gas when it's quiet. And I think the thing for me is when you're walking into those sorts of venues and it's quiet and the team aren't really engaged or they're low on energy, it's the question is kind of, where is the manager? What are they doing? And I think, having worked both sides of the spectrum, so as a central person and on the floor, I think there's a responsibility around how much admin we've got that we're giving to frontline operators. How much do we really need them to do from a paperwork, email perspective, etc. And every time we're asking them to do that, we're taking them away from delivering some of that energy frontline. And I think, I think it's fairly complex, because I think the thing to add into here, I was probably going to say this a bit later, but it feels like the right time, is technology and the impact of technology in a hospitality environment. And I suppose the question around the business asking themselves, truly, why are they implementing technology? We live in a technological world. There are huge advancements and huge benefits to using technology in hospitality, but why are we putting that technology in? Is it to enhance the customer experience or the guest experience, or is it to save cost? And if your first reason is to save cost, you're aiming for something that's not going to be well felt by customers. So I was sitting in my turn to tell a story. I was sitting in a QSR fast casual place in Euston the other day, waiting for Karen, CEO of Purple, and they've installed technology. They've installed a load of screens which is really helpful in that environment. As a customer, I love going in there because it's quick, easy. I can get in, get out, get off my train, which I'm usually running to. But I sat there and I was watching the team interaction, and the team was saying all of the right things, but there was no energy, because the basic level of hospitality, that interaction, smiling and eye contact, two really basic, simple things, weren't being felt, weren't being seen, and therefore the energy and the mood within there was very transactional, and was just really flat. And then as soon as something was served, the team would then have a little conversation on the side. There was no kind of energy, and I couldn't spot a manager, which kind of brings me back to that original point: is where's the manager? If it's low on shift, low mood on shift, where's the manager?
That's really interesting, Craig.
Sorry, Nick, go on.
No, go.
I was going to say it's a really interesting point, because technology should be an enabler to the experience, right? And whether or not that's team experience, whether or not that's the customer experience, I think we can see that really clearly, where we have gone all in with kiosks in the majority of our brands. But we have typically that blended approach. If you still want to go to the counter, you can go to the counter. Or you can use the kiosk and you can pay at counter. And how do we make sure that the person who's behind the counter isn't like this? And that they've got their head, because which KDS screen are they looking at to see the order? How do they process it? Where does it come from? But how do we, inherently, we as human beings, we crave connection. We crave to be liked. We like that, communication with each other. And so I think, we see it with our team will tell us, oh, I don't like the machines, don't get to talk to anybody, don't like the kiosks. And it's finding the balance between efficiency and productivity, and ultimately what we set out to do. We're a hospitality business. We're about people, customers, and our team members.
It just makes so much sense. And the reason this is probably the longest segment of this webinar is because the felt experience is such a hospitality, retail, care industry thing, which is the thin line between your people and your customer is the thinnest in these industries than in any other industry. The gap between them is they physically can talk to somebody. And Jordan said to me ages ago, which was when your people are so close to your customer, your people's experience is strategic. That's it. Your experience of work is strategic. And we've pulled some stuff out, that comments that people have left, which is people don't return to shifts and to service because it was easy. They return because it's meaningful. They do meaningful work with people, and it's delivering that pride, delivering that purpose, delivering that connection is what keeps people coming back. And it's really interesting when we see the poll results that what people are saying that they kind of feel that the most attention needs to be on is probably around belonging, enjoyment, energy, connection, pride. I'm not surprised that no one has said that, because the scores we get for pride and purpose from hospitality always blow me away. People are so proud of the job they do because they are so connected with the people, with the brands, and the work that they deliver.
I also think there's a filter at play here as well, though. Like, 90-day turnover is a problem in every single hospitality organization in the country, possibly even in the world, unless you work for like a family pub somewhere. And it's pride often is one of the things that sifts people out, whether actually hospitality is for them or not. Like, if that pride in service, that pride in impact is a motivator for you or not. If you're just rocking up to hospitality because it's the job down the road and it feels like it's going to be easy from the outside, you're going to bounce off difficult shifts, difficult relationships, tricky customer conversations, because you don't have that broader connection. Whereas pride's often a very powerful hook to keep people into, actually, no, I do this because it has that impact on my customers. It has that impact on people's lives.
And I'm just going to probably close this session off now with some of the drivers of connection, enjoyment, and belonging that we have seen. And there's some interesting ones here, and I'll bounce really quickly into them. So connection, recognizing great work, the support I need from my manager to succeed in my job, and in my team, we're open and honest with each other. Belonging, I trust our most senior leaders, and we're going to come on to this next, trust the most senior leaders to act in the best interests of the organization. I get the support from my manager, and my organization supports good work-life balance and enjoyment. Here we go again. I get the support I need from my manager to succeed in my job. We recognize great work, and my organization is supportive of good work-life balance. Unsurprised, there's a lot of good stuff in there, and that manager and the leaders is so key. So I'm coming on to the next part, and this is kind of where we've seen if the felt experience is the beating heart of hospitality and we all can see it and feel it. The next step is some of the environmental factors, and we're going to start calling out where hospitality needs to step up and where we are seeing a gap. So you'll see a poll on your screen now, which is about what foundations cause the most friction at your site. So the data we saw from our report is that company leadership, communication, and people practices were the three main environmental areas that were scoring lowest in hospitality. The gap between company leaders and people, the communication not being relevant, timely, and effective, and recognition, and I dare say pay, and people practices not feeling reflective of the work that I do. And I'm going to come to you, Craig, because I think this is one where we could just jump straight in and start talking about what's the cadence of communications. We talked about busy. I'm interested in slow as well then. So what is the communication cadence that busy sites actually notice, that pre-shift, weekly, one-pagers, ops updates? What is it? What's the cadence that really lands?
I think there's a number of nice to haves. The only one that really kind of where you get people listening to you is that pre-shift brief. It's operations, so therefore it's got to be quick. If you're updating with a load of stats and a load of information and you're doing that weekly brief, you are losing your team. It's 90 seconds. Keep it simple. What thing went well yesterday, and recognize somebody from that? What didn't go so well, and what do we need to do today? One thing. And it needs to be specific. A kind of saying, we're going to give great service isn't specific. It could be that we're going to give every single person eye contact, because that will generate that involvement, that will generate that engagement. And if it's something that is needed within that business, then that's something that should be focused on. It needs to be simple, and it needs to be relevant, and it needs to be quick. I think the challenge around kind of that weekly piece, newsletters and emails and things like that, and WhatsApp groups, dare I say, the dreaded WhatsApp group, they're really ineffective ways of kind of communicating. I think there's a place for them when a business needs to communicate things down. But we're living in a world where the generational shifts that are happening, if you're sending out pages and pages of information, no one's reading it. No one's reading it unless you've got my attention. You've got my attention for 30 seconds, and then I'm not reading it.
Right. I mean, it is so interesting. I grew up in retail, so the 90-second pre-shift stand-up, everyone had to get there before their shift started. This wasn't a on shift, it was pre-shift, stand up, and it felt like this is what happened on shift today that you may need to know. This is what's happening today. This is what trading is going to change on. Suddenly the weather forecast has come up. We're going to get a load of barbecues coming in through the warehouse. We're going to need them on the shop floor as quick as we can get them. So prioritize this, do this, let me know if you need help on that. And it was that kind of that rhythm. It feels like that's what you're describing. And that's great because our line managers, our on-site people are delivering that. We'll come back to the leadership visibility. So I talked about Jonathan at Fuller's jumping in, pulling pints, which calls out leadership visibility to me because it's relatable. But Nicola, I've used your full name.
Ooh,
You're not in trouble.
looks like I'm getting told off.
Nicola. What does leadership visibility look like beyond the newsletter that Craig has said doesn't work? And how do you make a board felt on site when you've got so many sites?
So I'm I hate a newsletter. I'm not like, they become wallpaper. What do? You send them out, you expect somebody to print them off. They get stuck on a notice board that everybody walks past 20 times a day anyway. And they just, what goes on the walls just becomes blinkered to everybody. So it's like one of my pet hates about walking into site and seeing a notice board that's like got something that was like 3 years old on it, and it got put up and nobody ever took it down and replaced it. But I think leadership visibility is like, we've worked really hard on our comms platform to like what then becomes the difference between your senior leadership team visibility and your board level visibility, and what's required and how visible should you be, and where should you be visible. So I'm sat at Newport Pagnell today. I have cleaned cups up on, like, Starbucks was busy this morning and I went around with a tray and I've cleaned the cups up. They're used to that. Like, I do that all the time to help them out. The rest of, like, I get to Scotland maybe once a year. They don't get to see that. So what does that look like? But we've turned to video messaging as much as anything, so we can write in written comms. What's that top-down approach? What do we need to push out? What do we need people to see from the centre or a leadership perspective out? And actually, who's going to sit and read a document that's maybe not in their first language? What we can do is send a 90-second video out and caption it. And our platform allows us to translate that into different languages by caption. So, like, that seems to really work for us quite nicely as a business, in terms of being able to be seen. And that allowance of, we don't lock off our messaging either. So we'll be quite open, as particularly the leadership team, of, if you've got something to say, I'm quite happy for you to share it with me publicly and privately if you want to. Like, by doing that, to Craig's point, we've tried to turn off WhatsApp. But let's face it, we're all asking people to download work-based apps onto people's personal devices with personal data usage in sites that maybe doesn't necessarily have great Wi-Fi signal, or is difficult to get on a public Wi-Fi, so they're using their data. And so we have tried to switch from WhatsApp, but it's kind of a bit of a necessary evil, isn't it, Craig? Like, in terms of, I still use it. I'm not going to turn it off. I still use it. I just try not to use it on a day-to-day basis with my team, or when I'm communicating with anybody at work. I try and use our comms platform to set that example. But I think that leadership visibility, particularly in our business, in a multi-brand, multi-site operator, it's not necessarily always the leadership team, because we can be quite scary by job title. When you've got to speak to, when somebody's like, oh yeah, go and talk to Nick. Go and talk to Nick is very different to go and talk to the people director. Whereas actually for us, we have site directors, site leaders, and every single one of our site, they're our equivalent of an area manager. Their area just happens to be one location, but they could have 8, 12, 16 different stores within their one location. And so they have to manage all of that. It's about their visibility. Do the team know who they are? We're a 24/7, 365 business. Is that leadership visibility there at 6 o'clock in the morning? Is it there at 8 o'clock at night? Is it there at 11 o'clock at night when the night team come on? And how much do we enable people being able to have that tapping into that leadership piece when they need to?
Just going to build on a couple of little things there as well. Like, the what is relevant for who is the leader we're talking about is, like, often one of the biggest challenges when you design surveys and you listen to your teams, because leadership can show up in so many forms at so many levels, and it's actually who is going to have the biggest impact. And often it is that local level leadership that has an outsized impact. And, like, you get the stories, like, I have a friend who was telling me the other day, he used to work at Timpson's, and it was very much like, if you stayed in the store long enough, one of the family would be there working on site at some, like, multiple times over the course of your career. And there's that approach to it. But I think that is quite a central leadership model. Whereas actually, if you're going, no, this site manager or this area manager is the local leadership for that place. How do we develop them into delivering that? Is great. And only other thing I'll layer on as well is WhatsApp might be a necessary evil, but it is, if you're thinking about sending out a survey and you do use WhatsApp a lot in your organization, it's a really effective way to get people to fill in a survey if it drops into their WhatsApp messages. We found a lot of success with that.
We've got one client, 8,000 people, and
Yeah.
they ship 8,000 WhatsApp messages at launch, and then
we normally see a
incredible.
spike for response rates on the first day of a survey, but their spike is like disproportionately high.
Yeah, and there's I find this stuff is interesting in terms of, we talk about leaders, and you both, Nick and Jordan, you talked about impact and words as a word, impact. And impact is an important word for me, which is your impact felt in the moment? Is your impact, does it hang around far longer than when you've been on site? Does the impact of your actions and your voice, how you spoke to people, does that stay? I don't have to visit every site every day, because when I do visit, I have impact. And it might be shoulder to shoulder working, it might be being personable, it might be, when I'm here, I'm not just here to deliver bad news, I'm here to help you, and I'm senior. And Jordan won't be unfamiliar with
we
this.
have our annual head office goes back to the floor. It's one of my favorite days of the year, right? I get to go back into operations. I'm an operator at heart. I've been in hospitality since I was 15. Like, I've never done really anything else. Like, so, and it is one of my favorite days. We take our entire head office team, we shut the head office, and we make sure we have coverage at every one of our 61 sites. So we put people up in Scotland. We've just announced that we've purchased a site in Cornwall. So we'll have literally people in all four corners of the country. Try and do it in teams as well. So we'll do a people team takeover in one of our sites and take on all of the roles when we do it. And we do it at a very specific time of year. So we do it in June. We deliberately do it pre-summer, so that any outstanding kind of, if you just fix this button on the till, we could serve 2 customers in the time it takes us to do 1. We can take all of those ideas that our team give us and bring it back to the table and go, how much of this could we get done quickly? What barriers are we putting in the way of our team? That actually, it could be the leadership team that they're talking to. It could be a commercial brand manager. It could be one of our IT team. It could be one of our finance team. But they give us all these ideas of, if you change this, and all of a sudden we're going from a top-down approach to inverting the triangle and having the team tell us, what you could do this and it would make my job better, my job easier, and it would improve my customer experience.
It's really interesting when we see the results of the poll that's just come in around leadership visibility is there, rota clarity is there, systems tech basics is there, people practice consistency is there, and communication cadence is there, and they're all connected, right? So there is a connection between a lot of these, and being seen also drives empathy. And if I look at overall drivers, if you want your people to recommend you as a great place to work, one of the drivers is senior leaders are trustworthy. If you want people to be motivated, senior leaders are trustworthy. If you want your people to be less tempted to move away from your organization, they should believe that the organization is heading in the right direction. And we build trust by being seen. We build that connection. We tell our story and we deliver our message. And I think, Jordan, you're absolutely right. That cascade from top all the way through to area managers, site managers, everyone has an opportunity to be a leader. But communication cadence appears to be the big one that is coming through, certainly here.
And just to layer in a thing there on those two questions about visibility and trustworthiness and the right direction for an organization, like we can't escape the fact these are essentially vibes based. Like, they are does an employee have a general sense that the leadership are trustworthy, that the organization is a safe and secure place to work? And that isn't going to be made by an individual event. Like, you're building this essentially narrative within your organization through comms, through leadership activity, through your local leadership, and then through that how your line managers behave, and how line managers tell stories about the organization they work in. And like all of those things go together, plus then business performance on top of that, to create the vibe of I'm somewhere successful, I'm somewhere I can trust, I'm somewhere where the leadership have got it right. And that can go all the way down to someone who is cleaning a site or working in a petrol station. And you can't get a leader to meet every single one of those people. But what you can do is build this broader narrative and the stories in your organization to do a good job on those questions.
It's a great point, and it brings us on to managers and the broader line managers, first line managers, and next, because we've seen across the data that perception of my line manager is high in hospitality. It's as high as any of the felt experience, and it's the same as perception of teamwork. So my team and my manager are scoring very positively. It feels like this is an area that any hospitality business can really lean in on, but also it must be an area of risk, which is that line manager breaks, poor line management, we have an issue. I mean, I guess, Nick, how do you upskill first line managers quickly? If we're talking about we're in an industry of quick turnover, are we recruiting from the industry? Are we recruiting from outside of the industry? What's the learning, and what's the manager toolkit that really helps them move that needle?
So our middle managers, our line managers, our store managers are the population we get stuck at, I think. Either information gets from the bottom up, gets stuck there, stuff coming down gets stuck there, as well. And how do we tap into that? My mantra for the last 12 months has been, how do we make our line managers better tomorrow than they were yesterday? Because unless at that level you show potential to do a bigger role, development in that role typically stops, apart from you might roll out some e-learning every month, or it could be, we're wanting to implement something, so we're kind of sheep dip everybody. So what do we do with that population to give them more skills? But when it comes to upskilling people into that line management role really quickly, it's typically very task focused initially. Have they got the skills to do the job? And then how do you layer those line manager practices with them? We don't let anybody loose in that role until they've done our manager academy. So having those early career paths in place. So we're leading a team, leading a business, and then our manager academy. And to get signed off and get given your keys, you have to have been through those. And whilst there is some task in those, they are very led by the behaviours that we need to see from you as a manager. And they're very connected to our business values, our business purpose, and the vision of where we want to get to, whilst trying to instill in everybody, what are our standard people practices? What are the key policies that we need you to know to enable to manage your team and get the best out of you, to get the best out of your employees that work for you on a day-to-day basis? And some of that is, again, back to keep it simple, keep being good at the basics. So we don't get it right every time. We're not perfect, but what we do know is our manager turnover is quite low. Our store manager turnover is only at 15%, and we're hugely proud of that. And our global labour turnover as a business is just taps on the 40% mark. So, we've done well, particularly in the, we're on the motorways. You've got to drive to get here, mostly. And how do we make people, back to the point that we first started with, how do you build that connection? How do you make people feel they belong? How do we give them the skills to leave but the desire to stay, and enough to say, yeah, this is where I want to come to work.
I love that, Nick. I think it's great, and I think that's a really nice segue then over to Craig, because Craig, you've lived most of your career as an operator, and now with Purple Story, this is exactly what you do, which is help operators be better today than they were yesterday. And I imagine a lot of those operators are going to be first line managers, middle managers as well. I mean, what are you seeing, Craig? What are you seeing in the environment? What are people craving? What's the training they're looking for? What's the upskilling they're looking for? What does be better translate to in your world?
Yeah, I think, how long have we got, right? I think one of the things that really sticks to mind is, so we will call this the leadership legacy trap in Purple Story, and it's the to use the word cadence of leadership or behavioural management that flows down. And when you kind of map it out, really simply, 3 stick people on a piece of paper, you can see that we're 2 steps removed from the 1970s or the 1950s. And we're still using some of those practices today. And I think what managers, what leaders are yearning for is something that's different, something that's going to move the needle. We've got so many competing factors. Already mentioned generations. It's a big thing in Purple Story. We've got so many competing factors. The generation that's coming through sees the world very, very differently, certainly to somebody in the 1950s and certainly to somebody that was born in the 1980s. And what are we doing to prep people for that? What are we doing to give managers that are from those kind of earlier generations, what are we doing to prep them to be different, to allow people to develop themselves? Because it's very different. I was running a workshop this week and we were talking about the sandwich from the 1990s, the praise sandwich. We didn't call it the praise sandwich, but I'll leave that there. And we've got to be really clear in our communication in what we're saying. If you're having a conversation with somebody, you've got to be to the point and don't mix your words. You're either course correcting something or you're praising someone. Don't mix the two. And that's something that's quite different, and you just kind of see these light bulbs going on. But as soon as as soon as we're talking about things like generations or where did you learn your management skills for? When was the last time that you really honed them? What is the difference between development and promotion? Because development should just be an ongoing thing. These sorts of things, and what are you doing to get to know people that are around you, people that you lead? Back to Nick's point, how much information do you know about people, and how much information do people know about you? We're not talking about, what happened to you as a child, and therefore that's meant that that's the way that you are today. But kind of, just some simple stuff. What are you struggling with as a leader, and what can your team help you with? That level of vulnerability is shied away from, and I think that just again building on a point that Nick made around, we have these big organisations and we have these layers of management that are tasked with trying to find the solutions to problems, and they'll do 3-month projects and they'll sit in rooms scratching heads. They'll have big kind of whiteboards and all that sort of stuff. Your team have got the answers. They know what's wrong. They're probably already fixing it, but it's against your standard. So maybe it's not the team are wrong. Maybe it's the standard that's wrong, and maybe that standard is too refined.
And it sounds like for that manager stuff, you're really getting in there for doing that. And I like to ask for top tips on this type of stuff before we get that. We'll come on to the listening part of listening to our managers in a minute. So recognition, line manager recognition has been a theme in our report. Line managers being the people that praise in the moment, that manage that with clarity. Like, how do you build a habit of doing that when you're still going to do it on a Saturday night in the club? You're still going to do it at lunchtime in the restaurant. You're still going to do it at the early dinner service or early coffee hit at 4 o'clock, as if people are rushing to their trains in London and they just want their coffee to get on the go. How do you build a habit as a line manager to recognize in those moments?
Recognition doesn't have to mean reward. And I think we all probably get a bit hung up on reward and recognition go hand in hand. And recognition doesn't have to have monetary value attached to it. Some people that is a pat on the back and a well done. Some people that's a thank you. We introduced we don't have a huge budget in a typical people team. We're a cost center, so budgets are tight every year. So we look at sort of low cost and no cost options for where we can do that, and we do give our managers a recognition pot every month. and it's a use it or lose it basis. So if they didn't spend it 1 month, we don't top it up to double the next month, it's gone. But we talk about little and often recognition. You know, we've kind of got rid of the bottles of wine and the boxes of chocolates and very kind of samey stuff. But then said, actually, you don't need to then do a £20 recognition. You know, there's nothing wrong with £5 or, you know, or £10, to just, and I think, Craig, you said it like right at the beginning of the session, is catch people doing the right things at the right time and stop looking for the negative things, right? So when somebody's done something amazing, is call that out. And sometimes, like most of the time, that is enough for somebody and being recognized for that great behavior. But one of the things that we've done, and again built it into our academies, is recognizing that, and putting that in the hands of people, and providing. I mean, we just got thank you cards. Like, it was as easy as that. Like, just give someone a thank you card. If it's not just a thank you, and it could be like, we love a badge. Like, we love a badge. We love something that we can physically hold on to, that kinesthetic piece of holding on to it. I have got badges and thank you cards and notes in my loft from when I worked in a restaurant behind the bar when I was 18. Like, I love keeping hold of it. I love getting all that sort of stuff back out. And actually, it's got meaning. That's the point. It's done with meaning. And I think you can give somebody a monetary reward and it feels hidden. It doesn't always necessarily feel like it's personal, but when the reward is personal and you've taken the time to write a little thank you note, that I think has more power and more impact as a leader than giving somebody a £20 bit of recognition.
I think it makes sense. It just all makes sense. And I think, like, if I think about, we do a lot of events, we go to events, we have lots of people walking past us. And one of the things that Naomi and Savannah in our team put in place one conference was compliment cards. And it just said simply something like, I love your smile, or your trousers are amazing. And every single person that we gave a compliment card to, in a no sale environment, beamed, absolutely beamed. Jordan, how do we measure this? How do we get out to our line managers and hear from them about, are they effective? Do they feel effective? Do they feel enabled and capable? How do we get out there? Is it a subset of a survey, or is it a dedicated listening program? What are we doing?
So I think this comes back to one of these pieces that we talked about from our insight report, the sort of whole industry insight report late last year, sorry, was we kind of give managers a bit of a bad rap. We can often blame managers for, actually, they're the ones who are being the sticking point. They're the ones who are causing the problems. If we could just fix the manager issue, we'll be all right. And then actually you talk to teams and they're generally quite positive about their managers, unless they're a creep. But where you've got a couple of Nicholas nodding there, it's true. We deal in hospitality. Sometimes a manager is a creep and it's an ER case. But there's an element of this where managers are often doing the right thing in general anyway. And it's helping just to steer them towards like having the more positive than the negative conversations. And that comes out partly from actually monitoring their teams, not the managers. But it's in the listening you're doing with managers. Maybe it's a rooted question in a survey. Maybe it's actually getting feedback up through your area managers in ops meetings. You don't even have to go down a formal listening path at all. It's actually understanding, well, what's getting in your way of delivering, of praising people in the moment. Because if people say that they're too busy, they need a bit of a mindset shift. It takes 2 seconds. If people are saying, oh, I can't do it because none of my team are performing, well, that gives you a bunch of new red flags to deal with first before you start to think about the recognition. And so by opening and keeping this dialogue going with your managers, that's how you can identify some of the challenges.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I think that kind of anything we can do to listen to line managers, anything we can do to like give them that voice, anything we can do to help them be heard, to say when they're struggling,
don't fold their results, don't fold their voice in with their teams. They're a separate population that are important to understand as a cohort, not just as a member of this broader site.
Right. We have got some questions. We've put a Link in for anyone who wants to download the hospitality culture report. Anyone who's signed up to the webinar will be sent a copy in the next week. We've also got our hospitality webpage on there, lots of resources, and there's a podcast from you, Jordan, talking about what makes a great general manager with Rob, our director of people science. There's some really good blogs and everything on there, so go and check those out. I'd like to spend, if I can, I'm just looking at the time, 3 minutes on front of house and back of house differences. So one of the things that has come out of this, unsurprisingly, this is probably, this is a hospitality thing more than anything, is that the front of house and back of house have two very different experiences. And back of house are more likely to advocate and recommend the industry than the front of house are. Front of house are more likely to complain about clarity of communications and everything else. We've got a poll that's just popped up. I'm going to jump straight in, Craig, probably going to come to you really quickly on this one, which is, I guess, if you could fix one back of house system, because that's one of our big challenges. Back of house is saying the systems that we have are terrible. They're not effective. What would you prioritize if you were a hospitality business right now?
I suppose the biggest piece of tech back of house is around the KDS. I'll just go back to my early point. The challenges around whatever technical challenges are being felt by the team, they've got the answers or they've got the ideas. They might not have the technical know-how, but they've got the answers or they've got the ideas. It might be that a prep list is needed or a ticket system isn't working the way that it should do. Each site is individual in kind of how it's set up and things like that. So having this kind of cookie cutter approach to how we roll out tech doesn't necessarily work. So I think it centers around that KDS piece. But I think it's that the individual site will give you what those answers are that will be beneficial across the organisation.
Okay, and in terms of connection leading to enjoyment, I mean, back of house and front of house have to work together. So both Craig and Nick, if you could advise people on one thing that they could go in and start getting more cohesive connection between your back of house team and your front of house team, what would it be?
Like understand each other's jobs. It's a bit like walk a day in my shoes. Particularly, if I look at KFC in our business, where we've got the most back of house, I guess, where you classify us as back of house. It's hot, it's working with fryers, it's quite intense, and it can be really intense working on the front line on the counter as well, especially when it's busy. But if we ever swap them over, they always want to go back to where they came from. But it's that mutual appreciation of knowing what the other does and that one doesn't have it easier than the other, and that there is that kind of, you both have to work together. You both have to work in harmony to make that work.
Yeah, completely agree. Front of house, do pot wash for a shift. It's the most important job in any restaurant is pot wash. And back of house, getting them out onto the floor and seeing the pressures that that front of house are under from people, and why it matters that dish is as it should be. Cross training.
Yeah,
brilliant. I love this, and I could do a whole webinar doing my impression of Gordon Ramsay on Kitchen Nightmares, by the way. But my team are sick of it, so I'm not going to do it. Jordan, we're into our last few minutes. We've done listening, we understand problems, we understand what's going on, we've gone out there and talked to our people, we've run surveys, whatever it is, we've done all this stuff. And ultimately what we now need to do is we need to show causality. We need to show operators that this isn't a HR initiative, listening to our people isn't some HR thing, that actually when we do something here, it drives a positive outcome for you in the operation. How do we make that simple for organizations to take? And we'll fix on survey results, right? How do we take that and turn it?
It's really easy in these situations, especially if you live your life in like HR or live your life in surveys and listening, is to try and go, how do we tell this data story? And you try and find the best formulation for that. But actually what you need to do for the populations you're speaking to is make it more practical. Get the data out of it. Instead, the data informs the story you tell. And in this kind of situation, often when I'm working with managers, my question would actually be, well, how stressed do you want to be whenever you take a holiday? And because if you've set your team up for success through listening, through recognition, through helping them to see what the right thing is, if you're not holding your site together through force of will alone, you're going to have a much nicer holiday when you get to take it, if you get to take it, than if you are in an environment where your team are constantly coming to you, can't deal with issues, where you've got performance management problems going on that are untreated. And so actually telling that story of, well, we know to get your non-stressful holiday, you need to be getting A, B, and C right. Don't try and sell them on engagement. Don't try and even sell them on motivation. Sell them on actually, what is this practically going to make a difference for you? How is this going to make a difference for you? And how do you get there?
Thank you. And I'm just going to flash this up as we close, which is if there happens to be a CEO wondering whether we should do this or not, the service profit chain prevails, that people and the experience they have is the customer experience. And there's a great study by Marriott that found the higher employee engagement achieved 22% lift in profitability and a 21% increase in productivity, driven by stronger guest satisfaction, higher revenue per available room. The data is there for this industry that should make this come to life for people. And I think that as we close, thank everyone for joining, thank everyone for coming through. We've had a couple of questions. If we have time, we're literally into the last 60 seconds. So from Rebecca, she says, what comms platform does anyone recommend? Do you have one that you would use and recommend?
So we use WorkVivo by Zoom. We have been live with it for just over a year. It is for us now, we have won 2 awards for the work that we've done with them this year. I'd wholeheartedly recommend it, but find the right supplier as well that works for your business.
Brilliant. Anything from you, Craig, on that one?
No, I just agree with what Nick said about just making sure it's the right for your business.
Yeah. We've got one specific about inclusion, about do you focus on recognizing and addressing specific differences, or is it on designing everything to be as inclusive as possible by default?
So my default would try and be as inclusive as possible by default, but it is a hybrid of the two. So we would build systems and processes and ways of working that make it as inclusive as possible, but there are always people where you're only truly delivering equity when you deliver something different for them. So that's kind of on a need to know by individual basis when we need to change something.
And when you're thinking about systems and processes from a central point of view as well, like be a data nerd, like find where the processes, the systems, the things are going wrong for specific populations. Are you losing people at interview? Are you losing people in the first 60 days? Are you not progressing a certain demographic through your organization? Like finding those data points can help you to build the systems of inclusion and remove the barriers to equity.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Mariam, we have a question from you, but I'm going to come back to you on this one if you don't mind. We'll send you the answer. I will ask the team to do that. Super aware of people's time. It's very precious, particularly in this industry. But Mariam, we promise you a reply around your top 3 characteristics. We will come back to you on that one personally and share it with everyone in the group as well. So thank you, Nick. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Jordan. And we will be sharing this on our usual channels soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
All right.